A baby followed, bloody paw prints to a German shepherd. What he saw made everyone cry. He didn't mean to wander. Liam was just chasing a butterfly, the kind with orange wings and black dots that danced in the morning light. But soon, the butterfly was gone, and Liam stood still on the edge of the woods, staring at something strange on the ground. There, pressed into the dirt like little red stamps, were paw prints, big ones. But they weren't just muddy, they were smeared with something darker. Liam looked closer. His little voice barely made a sound. "Doggy!" The blood trailed off between the trees, disappearing under low branches and damp leaves. Most kids would have run back, but Liam, all 2 feet of him, took one tiny step forward, then another, and another. He didn't understand what blood meant. He just knew someone might be hurt. The woods got quiet as he walked. Even the birds seemed to hush. Then he saw her, half hidden under a fallen branch. A German shepherd. Her fur was matted with dirt and blood, her breathing shallow and rough. One eye blinked open, then shut again. Liam dropped to his knees. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He pulled out the only thing he had in his tiny hands, a red plastic truck, and set it beside her paw. "It's okay, puppy," he whispered. "You can play with this." The dog didn't move, but her ear twitched. Back at the house, Clara was washing dishes when the silence hit her. No giggles, no babble. Her heart dropped. "Liam," she called out, stepping into the yard. Nothing. She ran. It took her 5 minutes to spot the trail of tiny footprints heading into the trees. Her breath caught. Her legs moved faster than her thoughts. The woods weren't safe, not for a toddler, not with wild animals, not with... Then she saw him, crouched beside something. "Liam!" she screamed. He didn't flinch. She froze when she saw the dog, wounded, bleeding, barely alive. "Don't touch it, baby!" she shouted, but he turned to her, with a face so calm it stopped her mid-step. "She's tired," Liam said, "but she's still breathing." Clara got closer, pulling Liam gently away. The dog let out a low whimper, but didn't growl, just looked right at Clara like she was begging. "We need help," Clara said, fumbling for her phone. "Just hold on, girl, just hold on." The vet's office was 30 minutes away. They wrapped the dog in a blanket and drove fast. Clara kept checking the rearview mirror. The dog's chest moved, but slow. Liam sat beside her in the back seat, whispering softly the whole time. "You're not alone now, okay? I got you." The vet rushed her inside. Needles, tubes, beeping machines, words Clara didn't understand. Internal bleeding, fractured ribs, starved. "She's not chipped," the vet said. "Looks like she's been out here a while. Maybe dumped." Liam didn't know what all that meant. He just stared at the metal table, where the dog lay, wrapped in wires. "What's her name?" the nurse asked, trying to distract him. Liam looked at her bandaged body and the dried blood still stuck to her fur. "Hope," he said softly. "Her name is Hope." Clara blinked back tears. "Why Hope?" she asked. Liam shrugged, his voice small. "Because she's still trying." The vet said it would be touch and go through the night. They could leave her there, or stay in the waiting room. Clara looked at her son. He was already curled up in the chair beside the dog's crate, eyes heavy, but heart steady. They stayed. That night, while Clara dozed off in a stiff chair, Hope stirred. Her eyes fluttered open and locked onto Liam. His toy truck still sat on, the blanket next to her. She stretched her paw just enough to touch it, and then she let out a sigh. It wasn't the sound of giving up, it was the sound of someone finally safe. The waiting room was too cold, and the chairs too hard, but Liam didn't care. His little legs dangled from the seat, swinging slowly. His eyes stayed fixed on the glass door that led into the vet's treatment room, where Hope lay hooked to tubes and wrapped in bandages. Clara sat beside him, her hands trembling as she filled out forms. "Can you tell us where you found her?" the nurse had asked earlier. Clara had tried to explain about the woods, the paw prints, Liam's discovery, but none of it seemed to matter now. All that mattered was whether the dog behind that door would make it through the night. The vet had been gentle but honest. "She's lost a lot of blood, internal trauma, possible broken ribs, and she hasn't eaten in days. We'll do what we can." Clara had nodded slowly, but Liam. He had just stood by the door and whispered, "She's going to be okay. Right, Mama?" Now, hours later, Clara looked down at her son. "Liam, baby, we can go home and come back in the morning. Let the doctors work." But he shook his head. "She needs someone to wait with her." The vet finally came back out, wiping her hands with a towel. "We've stabilized her for now. She's sedated and resting. You can see her, but just for a minute." Liam jumped from his chair before Clara could even answer. Inside the treatment room, Hope looked small, smaller than she had in the woods. The metal table made her seem fragile, like she didn't belong in this world anymore. But when Liam walked in, her eyes opened, not wide, not startled, just open. Soft and slow. Liam stepped closer and reached out, his tiny fingers brushing the edge of her paw. "Hi, Hope," he said gently. "I'm here." The vet raised an eyebrow. "Hope." Clara stepped in behind him. "That's what he's been calling her." The vet smiled just a little. "That's a good name," Liam nodded. "She's trying so hard not to give up. That means she's still hoping." Hope's eyes didn't leave his face, even through the drugs, the pain, the haze. Her gaze stayed locked on him. Her breathing steadied, just a little, as if his presence gave her something the medicine couldn't. "Can I leave my truck with her?" Liam asked, pulling the red toy from his pocket. The vet bent down and helped him place it by Hope's side. "She might like that," she said. Liam stepped back, looked at Hope one more time, and whispered, "Don't go away, okay? I'll be here in the morning." Back in the car, Clara adjusted the seatbelt around her sleepy son. "You did a brave thing today, Liam." He yawned. She was just laying there. Nobody was helping. Clara didn't have the words. She started the engine and drove home with her heart heavy and her hands tight on the wheel. That night, Liam didn't sleep in his room. He lay curled on the couch, his arms wrapped around a stuffed dog. The real one, Hope, was fighting for her life under bright lights and strange machines. Meanwhile, in the dark of the vet's office, Hope stirred. She didn't move much. Couldn't, but her nose twitched. Her ear flicked. She smelled something, faint and plastic, the toy truck. And even in her pain, something inside her remembered the boy's scent, the soft sound of his voice. She let out a tiny breath. Not a whine, just air, just life. The next morning, Clara and Liam were at the vet's office before it opened. Liam ran to the front desk, eyes wide. "Is Hope okay? Did she make it?" The nurse gave him a tired smile. "She made it through the night. That's a big deal." The vet brought them into the back. Hope wasn't on the metal table anymore. She was resting on a soft blanket, her body still wrapped in gauze, but her eyes were clearer now. When she saw Liam, her tail gave the smallest thump. Clara gasped. "She remembers you," the vet said. "That's rare, especially with dogs that come in this rough." Liam stepped forward, knelt beside her and whispered, "Told you I'd come back." Hope blinked slowly, and for the first time since they'd found her, she tried to lift her head. The vet put a hand on Liam's shoulder. "She's not out of the woods yet, but she's fighting, and that's something." Clara crouched beside her son. "You gave her a reason, Liam." Liam smiled softly. "She's not scared anymore, not when I'm with her." Hope's eyes closed again, not from pain, but peace. She knew her name now, and she knew she wasn't alone. The car hummed quietly as Clara drove home with Liam in the back seat, hugging his stuffed animal tight. Hope wasn't with them. She was still at the vet, resting. But her absence was heavy. The air felt colder somehow. Clara's eyes stayed on the road until they curved past the woods. That same thick patch of trees where Liam had found her, a glint of colour caught her eye. Something half buried in the brush, not there before. She slowed down, squinting. "Mama, why are we stopping?" Liam asked, sitting up straighter. Clara pulled over and stepped out carefully. The ground squelched under her shoes as she moved toward it. There, snagged on a branch and weighed down by damp leaves, was an old, faded jacket. Torn, mud-streaked, and stitched right into the shoulder was a strip of leather, a collar. Her stomach dropped. She picked it up gently. The collar was crude, hand-sewn into the fabric. Burnt into the leather was a name, barely legible through grime and scratches. Angel. Behind her, Liam had climbed out of the car and was standing quietly. He pointed at the trees and said in a whisper, "That's where Hope came from." Clara's throat went dry. "Are you sure, baby?" He nodded. She was running from someone. She stared at the jacket, its smell sour and heavy. There was blood too, dried, faint, but there. They drove the rest of the way home in silence. That night, everything felt off. Liam didn't touch his dinner. Clara double-checked every lock on the doors. Even the dog bed they'd laid out in. The living room for when Hope came home felt too empty. Around 2 a.m., Liam's cries tore through the house. Clara ran to his room, heart pounding. "What happened?" He sat up, clutching his chest. Hope was crying. Clara blinked. "She's not here, sweetie." "But I heard her," he insisted, eyes wide. She was screaming, in the woods, and someone was chasing her. Clara sat on the bed and held him. It was just a bad dream. But Liam shook his head. It was real. Hope remembers. Later that night, Clara couldn't sleep. She sat at the kitchen table staring at the jacket. Something about it bothered her more than it should. The collar was sewn in too tight, like someone had meant for the dog to stay tangled in it. Like it was a leash she couldn't escape. She picked up her phone and searched local news archives. There were whispers, old reports of missing dogs, illegal kennels shut down years ago, arrests made, but not many names released. She scrolled for hours until she found one article with a photo. Blurry, faded, but enough to show a man being led away in cuffs. Behind him was a shed that looked familiar, like the one near the trail in the woods. The man's face was partially hidden, but the name stuck. Glenn Rawley, convicted, served 3 years, released 2 months ago. Clara closed the browser. Her hands trembled. Outside, the trees rustled in the dark. At the vet the next day, Hope was stronger. She stood slowly when she saw Liam enter the room. Her tail wagged once, just once, but it was more than yesterday. The vet smiled. "She's healing faster than we thought. Animals like her. They hold on when someone's worth holding on for." Liam knelt down and whispered, "I missed you." Hope licked his hand. Clara sat on the edge of the bench, unsure whether to say what she'd found. The jacket, the collar, the article. It was all swirling in her head, mixing with the sound of Liam's soft voice and Hope's gentle breathing. Finally, she asked the vet, "Do dogs remember? I mean, bad things?" The vet nodded. "Not like we do. But yes, smells, voices, places. Trauma sticks to them in different ways. Could she remember a man?" The vet looked at Hope. If he hurt her badly enough, she might never forget. That night, Hope didn't sleep. She lay by the door, growling low under her breath. At one point, around 3 a.m., she jolted upright and let out a howl that shook the house. Liam came running down the hall. "Hope, it's okay," he said, crouching beside her. Hope backed into a corner, trembling. Clara turned on the lights. "Liam, step back, honey." But Liam didn't move. "She's not scared of me." He reached out slowly. Hope didn't flinch. Her breathing calmed just a little. Clara noticed something then. Hope wasn't looking at Liam. She was looking at the window, at the woods. The trees outside swayed in the wind, but beyond them, something felt wrong. Like the night itself was watching. Clara closed the curtains and pulled Hope close. She knew now, Hope hadn't been abandoned. She had escaped. And maybe, just maybe, whoever she escaped from hadn't gone far. Hope was getting better. Her legs were stronger, her tail wagged more often, and the light in her eyes was coming back. But only when Liam was near. She still flinched at loud sounds and froze if anyone else touched her. But with Liam, she softened. Every morning, she waited by his high chair, and every evening she refused to eat unless Liam knelt beside her and fed her by hand. Clara noticed it one night. "She won't touch it until you give it to her," she said, watching Liam scoop soft dog food onto a plastic spoon. "She's scared. To eat alone," Liam replied, his voice calm. "Maybe someone used to yell at her." Clara didn't answer. She just watched the way Hope leaned into her son's side, pressing close, like he was a safety blanket. Later that evening, as the sun began to set, Hope stood at the back door, growling low and steady. Clara glanced up from the dishes. "What is it, girl?" Hope didn't bark. She didn't move, just stared out into the darkening woods. Her tail was stiff, body frozen. A warning. Clara walked over and looked through the glass. The trees were still. No movement, but Hope's eyes were locked on something deep past the fence. Then Clara saw it. A small, crumbling structure, barely visible through the branches. Something she'd never noticed before. A shed, old, half covered in vines and moss. "Liam, stay." "Inside!" she called, grabbing a flashlight. She stepped out the back door, her shoes crunching softly on the dry grass. Hope followed, staying close, but her ears stayed pinned and low. As they reached the edge of the property, Clara pushed through a gap in the trees. There it was, wooden walls leaning sideways, the roof caved slightly in. A rusty padlock clung to the front door like it had been untouched for years, but the dirt in front of it was disturbed. Recently. "This doesn't look abandoned," Clara whispered. Hope crept forward and sniffed the door. Suddenly she growled, a low, trembling sound that turned into a bark. She clawed at the base of the door, frantic, then yelped and stepped back. Clara knelt to examine it. Scratches, deep and erratic, too fresh, not weather damage, dog claws. A chill crept up her spine. She tugged at the lock, but it held firm. "Great," she muttered. "Locked tight." She took one more look at the ground, more paw prints, a few small ones. Maybe a puppy. Hope whimpered beside her. Clara stood. "Come on, girl, let's go." They returned to the house. Liam was waiting by the window. "Where did you go?" he asked, worried. "Just out back." There's a shed." Hope didn't like it. Liam's eyes widened. "She came from there." "What?" He nodded. "She ran out of that place when I found her. I remember." Clara crouched beside him. "Liam, are you sure?" She was bleeding, and the door slammed behind her. Clara felt sick. "Did you see anyone else?" He shook his head. "Just her." But the place felt bad. That night, Hope refused to sleep. She sat in front of the back door, eyes fixed on the woods. At one point, she let out a single, sharp bark. Clara ran over, heart pounding. "What is it? What do you see?" But there was nothing out there, just darkness. She didn't sleep much. Her mind kept circling back to the shed, the scratches, the paw prints, the locked door. Who locked it? And why? The next day, Clara called animal control. There's an old shed near my property. I think someone might have kept dogs there. The man on the phone didn't sound surprised. You're not the first to say something like that. Any evidence inside? It's locked, but there are claw marks. Fresh. We'll send someone out to take a look. Hope barked once from the living room. Not loud, almost like she understood. Later that afternoon, Liam was playing with his trucks on the porch when Hope suddenly ran to the edge of the yard, barking like mad. Clara rushed outside. Hope stood at the tree line, her fur bristled. Clara followed her eyes. A man was standing just inside the woods. He was wearing a dark hoodie, his face hidden. When Clara shouted, "Hey, who are you?" he turned and vanished, just disappeared into the trees. She scooped Liam up and backed into the house, locking every door. Hope didn't move from the window for the rest of the night, and neither did Clara. They came early the next morning. 2 officers from animal control and a deputy from the sheriff's office. Clara led them through the yard and into the woods, Hope walking beside her, silent but alert. Liam stayed behind with a neighbour, though he didn't want to. "Hope needs me," he'd whispered, eyes full of worry. Clara kissed his forehead. "She'll be okay. I promise." The trees were still, as if they were listening. The deputy squatted near the shed, tugged at the rusted padlock, and gave Clara a look. "You sure you haven't touched anything?" "Just found it like this yesterday." Hope started growling the second she saw it. The deputy nodded to the animal control officer, who pulled out a bolt cutter. With one sharp crack, the lock snapped. The door groaned open slowly, the hinges shrieking like they hadn't moved in years. The smell hit first, rancid, like old urine, rotting meat, and wet hay. One of the officers gagged. Inside, the air felt thick. Flies buzzed around old bowls, some still crusted with what looked like mouldy dog food. Chains hung from the walls, bolted into place. The floor was covered in claw marks, scratches, so many. Some shallow, some deep, some in circles, like whatever was trapped inside had spun in panic, trying to escape. Clara covered her mouth. "Oh my God." Hope didn't enter. She froze at the threshold, her body stiff. Her nose twitched, tail tucked tight. She let out a low, heartbroken whimper. The animal control officer stepped in further and pulled back a pile of hay in the corner. "There's something under here," he muttered. He knelt and gently brushed away the layers. Beneath it was a small pink collar, dirty, frayed, but still whole. Etched in tiny lettering was one word: Angel. Hope let out a bark, loud, desperate, then another. Then she howled. She ran inside, straight to the collar, barked again, sniffed it wildly. Then her legs gave out, and she dropped to the floor, whimpering like a wounded pup. Clara knelt beside her. "Hope, was this your puppy?" Hope pawed at the collar, nudging it gently, over and over again. The deputy looked away, jaw tight. "Looks like someone was breeding. Or worse." Hope let out a broken yelp, and then pushed her face into the collar. Clara's eyes filled with tears. At that moment, Liam appeared in the doorway. He'd snuck away from the neighbour's house, his stuffed dog under one arm. "Liam!" Clara rushed to him. "You weren't supposed to—" But Liam wasn't looking at her. His eyes were locked on Hope. He walked forward slowly and crouched beside her. She turned to him, her face trembling. He placed a hand on her cheek and whispered, "You lost your baby." Hope whined and pressed her head into his chest. No one in that shed said a word. Not the officers, not the deputy, not Clara. They just watched as a boy comforted a mother who had lost everything. Later, the officers took photos, bagged the collar, measured the scratches. One of them sighed. "We've seen places like this before, usually part of underground, dogfighting rings or illegal breeding." Clara's voice was shaking. She was a mum, and they took her baby. The officer nodded. and she escaped. Somehow. Hope was back on her feet now, pacing slowly around. The shed. Her nose stopped at a corner. She sniffed once, twice, then started pawing at the wood. Clara stepped over to look. Behind a loose plank was a stack of old photos. Blurry, dark, but clear enough. Dogs in cages, chained together. One photo showed a litter of puppies, all wearing pink collars. Angel was one of them. Clara stared in horror. They documented it like trophies. Hope barked once more, loud, sharp. The deputy looked at Clara. We're opening a formal investigation. If this ties to who I think it does, he's not new to this. Who? Glenn Rawley. Used to run rings like this years ago. Got out recently. But he's smart. Never leaves a clear trail. Clara's blood turned cold. That was the same name she'd found online. The man in the photo. The man who used to live in this area. The man who might still be nearby. They left the shed with evidence bags and grim faces. Hope refused to walk away. She kept looking back, kept glancing at the collar in the officer's hand. Back home, Liam lay curled up with Hope on the living room floor. Do you think Angel's still out there? He asked. Clara knelt down, brushing his hair. I don't know, baby. But if she is, we'll find her. Hope blinked slowly and laid her head on Liam's chest. Her baby was gone. But she had found something else. A boy who saw her pain, and a family that might just help her heal. The house should have felt quiet, peaceful, but it didn't. Not that night. Hope paced from room to room, her nails clicking softly on the floorboards. Her breathing stayed shallow, her eyes darting toward every sound. She wouldn't sit still, wouldn't eat, wouldn't rest. Liam had tried lying on the rug beside her, patting her back and whispering little songs. It worked sometimes before, but not now. Come on, Hope, he whispered. It's bedtime. Hope walked over, sniffed his toy truck, then turned to the window. Her tail didn't wag. It hung low, like something was weighing it down. Clara watched from the hallway. She didn't say a word, just stood in the shadows, arms crossed tight, eyes filled with worry. She knew what trauma looked like. She'd seen it in people. Now she saw it in a dog. Hope kept staring out the window. Her body would go still, then twitch. Her nose pressed against the glass, whimpering, soft but constant. Clara walked into the kitchen, turned on her laptop, and started typing. Dog fighting, illegal kennels, German Shepherd rescue, puppy mills, underground breeding. She didn't want to believe it, but the evidence was stacking up: the shed, the collar with Angel, the scratches on the walls, Hope's reaction, and the name Glenn Rawley kept coming up. Not in headlines, but in message boards, articles buried deep, whispers online. He was careful. Moved around, changed phone numbers. Some people said he used to pose as a trainer. Others said he still had connections in illegal circles. One thread mentioned a location, only a few miles from where they lived. Clara closed the laptop. Her hands were shaking. Hope barked once, just one sharp sound, and ran into Liam's room. Clara followed quickly. Hope was sniffing his toys now, his stuffed bear, his books. She nudged his blanket, then looked up at Clara. It wasn't curiosity. It was fear. It's okay, girl, Clara whispered, kneeling down. You're safe now. Hope whimpered and laid down beside Liam's bed, eyes never closing. Liam sat up and rubbed his eyes. Why's she scared, Mama? Clara brushed hair from his forehead. She's just remembering things, baby. Sometimes the past comes back at night. Liam looked at Hope, her chest rising fast. Is Hope a bad dog? Clara blinked. What? No, sweetheart. But she growls and cries, and she's scared of people. Clara wrapped her arms around him and held him close. Hope's not bad. Some people, bad people, made her believe she had to be tough to survive. They hurt her, and now she doesn't know who to trust. Liam looked down at Hope. So, it's not her fault. Not at all, Clara whispered. Some people are just monsters, but she's not one of them. Hope licked Liam's hand gently, as if to say thank you. Later that night, Clara tried to sleep, but Hope's footsteps kept echoing through the hall. She was patrolling the house like a soldier, nose down, ears up. Every time she passed by Liam's room, she'd pause, then move on. Clara sat up, turned on her phone flashlight, and followed her into the living room. Hope was staring at the back door now, frozen. "You hear something?" Clara whispered. Hope growled, barely audible, her muscles tensed. Clara looked through the peephole. Nothing, just the yard, the fence, the edge of the woods. But something about the air. It felt wrong. She double-locked the door and sat down on the floor. Hope finally laid beside her, not sleeping, just watching. A few minutes later, Liam walked in, rubbing his eyes. "I had a dream again," he said softly, "about Angel. She was crying for her mum." Clara pulled him into her lap. "I know, baby. Do you think someone took her away?" Clara looked at Hope, then back at her son. "I think someone tried, but maybe she got away, like Hope did." Hope whimpered again and rested her head on Liam's lap. For a few moments, everything was still. Then Hope lifted her head and stared at the window. Her ears perked. Her body leaned forward. Clara looked too. Far in the distance, barely lit by the moon, was a shadow moving through the trees. Not fast, just slow enough to be seen. Clara's breath caught in her throat. Hope let out a growl. Liam whispered, "He's looking for her, Mama." Clara didn't respond. She just hugged him tighter and locked every window in the house. Hope was healing on the outside. Her wounds were closing. Her limp was barely noticeable now. She even let Clara brush her fur gently while Liam sang lullabies in the background. But inside, something still wasn't right. She startled at certain sounds: metal clinks, cage, doors, the rattle of keys. And no matter how many soft beds Clara laid out, Hope always chose the floor beside Liam's bed. Her eyes rarely stayed shut for long. That morning, Clara took her to the vet for a checkup. The ride there was tense. Hope sat in the back seat with her head low, tail curled under her. Liam leaned over and whispered, "It's okay, Hope. No cages. I'll be there the whole time." At the clinic, the vet gently examined Hope's legs, ribs, and back. "She's recovering well, much faster than expected," the vet said, smiling. But when she got to Hope's head, her fingers froze. She murmured, gently tilting Hope's ear back. Clara stepped closer. "What is it?" The vet reached for a small flashlight and peered behind Hope's left ear. "There's an old tattoo here. Faded, but it's there." "A tattoo?" Clara asked. "Like a name," the vet shook her head. "No, just a code, letters and numbers. These aren't for identification like microchips. They're usually used by underground breeders, people who mark dogs like inventory." Clara's stomach turned. "You mean like for fighting or selling?" "Sometimes both. It's hard to know which. But this isn't something vets or shelters use." Liam looked up, confused. "Someone wrote on her skin?" The vet nodded gently. "Yes, sweetheart. A long time ago." Hope whimpered softly, and Liam reached out to stroke her ear. "That's why she's scared of cages," he said. "They didn't treat her like a dog. They treated her like stuff." Clara sat down slowly, the weight of it all crashing into her. Hope hadn't just been left behind. She'd been owned, marked, used. This wasn't just a rescue story. This was survival. "Do you know who uses this kind of code?" Clara asked. The vet sighed. "Not exactly, but there are patterns. Some of these rings use specific letters to track location, batch, or bloodline. People trade dogs like property." Hope rested her head in Liam's lap. letting out a shaky breath. The vet continued, I can look into it. I have contacts in rescue, networks who deal with dogs from these situations. Maybe someone's seen this code before. Clara nodded. Please do. We need to know where she came from. Maybe it can help find Angel. On the way home, Liam was quiet. He stared out the window, then looked at Clara. Do you think Hope had a name before? Clara thought for a moment. Maybe. But if she did, it probably came from someone who didn't love her. That's why Hope matters more. You gave her that. Liam nodded slowly. Names mean love. Hope barked once, gently. It made Liam smile. That night, Clara couldn't stop thinking about the tattoo. She searched the code on forums, websites, rescue blogs, anywhere she could. She found one post that mentioned a similar string of letters and numbers. Dogs with codes like that had been rescued from a farm 3 towns over. Glenn Rawley's name came up again, and this time the date matched his release. He's back, Clara whispered, and he's using the same methods. She bookmarked everything and saved the screenshots. Down the hall, Liam was reading a picture book to Hope. See, this one, he said, pointing to a cartoon puppy. He gets to sleep in a warm bed, just like you now. Hope wagged her tail and rested her head on his blanket. Clara walked in and sat beside them. You're doing something amazing for her, Liam. He looked up. She saved me first, remember? I was lost in the woods, but I found her. Clara smiled, softly. Or maybe she found you. Outside, the wind picked up. The trees swayed gently, casting long shadows against the house. Hope looked at the window again, but this time she didn't growl. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in days, she slept without whimpering. The mark behind her ear was still there, but she was no longer a number. She was Hope. It was just past midnight when Hope snapped upright, barking, so violently it shook the walls. Her bark wasn't playful. It was raw, urgent, like an alarm that wouldn't stop ringing. Clara shot out of bed. Hope! What is it? Down the hall, Liam was already awake, clutching his stuffed bear. Hope was at the back door, barking at the fence like her life depended on it. Her nails scratched at the glass. Clara opened the door and Hope bolted out into the yard. She ran straight to the fence that separated them from their new neighbour, Mr. Glenn. She barked, then growled, then started digging at the base of the fence. Liam stood barefoot on the porch, staring into the dark. She hears something. Clara joined them outside, her robe fluttering in the breeze. Hope! Stop! She called, but Hope wouldn't. She scratched and growled, body tense, ears perked. Then they heard it, a sound, faint but clear, a high-pitched yelp. Liam grabbed Clara's hand. That's a puppy! Clara's heart dropped, another yelp, then a low whine. Hope went wild, barking louder, slamming her paws against the fence like she could tear through it. Her eyes were locked on something they couldn't see. Clara picked up Liam and rushed back inside. She grabbed her phone and dialed animal control, pacing the kitchen. Yes, it's Clara Reeves again. There's something behind our neighbour's fence. A dog. We heard it yelping. My rescue dog's reacting violently. She's never done this before. The dispatcher's tone was polite but tired. Ma'am, unless the animal's in immediate danger or you have visual confirmation, we can't intervene without permission or a warrant. Clara's jaw clenched. So you'll wait until it's dead to care? The dispatcher sighed. We'll make a note. That's all I can promise for now. She hung up and looked outside. Hope was still at the fence, barking, her voice hoarse. The next morning, Clara waited until 9 a.m. before walking over to her neighbour's front door. It was the first time she'd seen him up close. Mr. Glenn. He was tall, broad, with grey at his temples, and hands that looked too clean. He opened the door slowly, eyes cold. Can I help you? Clara forced a smile. Sorry to bother you. We thought we heard something last night. A dog crying. My son got scared. Mr. Glenn didn't blink. I don't own a dog. Right, just checking. She lingered. He didn't invite her in. Hope, watching from the porch, growled low. Mr. Glenn glanced past Clara and noticed the dog. That yours? Yeah. We rescued her a few weeks ago. He nodded slowly, then shut the door without another word. Clara stood there for a second, heart pounding. Something wasn't right. Back home, Liam knelt beside Hope. Why does she hate him, Mama? Clara sat beside him. I don't know, but dogs know things. Hope scratched at the door again. Her body was tense, eyes locked on the same spot, Mr. Glenn's yard. That night, Clara watched from the upstairs window. Around 11 p.m., she saw him step outside. He carried something heavy and square, a crate. He moved slowly like he didn't want anyone to notice. She grabbed her phone and hit record. He disappeared behind his shed. Moments later, the faint sound came again. A whimper, then silence. Clara felt her hands shaking. The next morning, she called the sheriff's office. I need to report something. My neighbor may be hiding a dog, possibly more. My son and I heard crying, and I recorded him moving a crate into his shed late last night. Do you have evidence of animal abuse? Clara hesitated. Not yet, but my dog. She's reacting, violently, and she came from a place like that. We'll log the report, Ma'am, but without visual proof or a search warrant, we can't investigate private property. Clara slammed the phone down. So we just wait. That evening, she stood at the fence with Hope by her side. Liam sat on the swing, quiet. Hope sniffed the air, tail stiff. Then she barked once, loud, direct, at the shed. Clara stepped forward and placed her hand on the wood. That's when she noticed it. Tiny scratches. Just like the ones in the old shed behind their yard. Low to the ground. Desperate. You're not imagining things, girl, Clara whispered to Hope. There's something behind that wall. Hope growled again, and Liam, watching from the porch, whispered, Angels behind there. I know it. Clara turned, and in that moment, she started to believe him. Clara had reached her breaking point. The scratches on the fence, the yelps, Hope's restless pacing, and now Liam, waking up in the middle of the night, whispering things no child should understand. Mama, angels in that yard. I feel it. Clara didn't argue anymore. She believed him, and she believed Hope. That morning, Clara called the police again. This time, her voice was sharp. There is a dog suffering next door. I have reason to believe it's being held in a crate. My dog, who was abused, reacts violently every night. This man was convicted before. His name is Glenn Rawley. That should be enough. But the officer on the phone sounded tired. Ma'am, we understand your concern, but without solid evidence or a warrant, we can't search private property. The law protects homes unless we can prove abuse. So I'm supposed to wait until the puppy dies? Clara snapped. The officer sighed. Unless you witness visible distress or can capture it on video, our hands are tied. Clara didn't reply. She just hung up. That afternoon, while Liam napped, and Hope laid quietly by his side, Clara grabbed an old baby monitor with a camera still tucked in the garage. She wrapped it in a towel, rigged it with a backup battery, and walked to the far edge of their backyard. Beneath a patch of ivy near the fence, she slipped it through the slats, facing Mr. Glenn's yard. She adjusted the angle, pressed record, and whispered, Let's see what you're hiding. That night, Clara hardly slept. Hope didn't either. She sat at the door again, growling low every time the wind shifted. Liam slept on the couch with his arms around her neck. Clara refreshed, the live feed on her laptop over and over. Most of it was still, dark, until 1:43 a.m. The motion sensor caught something. A figure stepped out from behind Mr. Glenn's house. A large man, moving slowly, like he'd done it 100 times before. He walked into the yard carrying a crate, plastic, heavy. He dragged it across the grass. Clara leaned in, heart racing. He stopped behind the shed, looked around, then opened the top slightly. A whimper, high-pitched, muffled, short. Then he slammed the lid shut, kicked the side of the crate, and walked back toward the house. Clara covered her mouth. Oh my God! Hope let out a deep, low howl. Loud, long, painful. Liam stirred on the couch and whispered, "She knows." Hope began pacing, barking toward the back door, scratching at it like she couldn't stand being inside anymore. Clara copied the video file and sent it directly to the local sheriff's department with one sentence typed in all caps. "This is enough. Get a warrant." Then she posted it anonymously in a community Facebook group. The comments exploded within minutes. "That's Glenn Rawley's house, isn't it? Someone call the news. This is proof." Poor dog. Clara didn't sleep. Hope didn't stop pacing. The crate in the video played on repeat in her mind. The yelp, the slam, the way the man looked around like he knew what he was doing was wrong, but didn't care. At 7 a.m., Clara got a call. "This is Deputy Harris. We saw the footage. A unit will be there in 30 minutes with a warrant. Please remain on your property." She dropped the phone and ran to the backyard. Liam was already awake, hugging Hope. "They're coming, Mama?" he asked. Clara nodded. "They're finally coming." At 7:36 a.m., 2 police cruisers pulled into Mr. Glenn's driveway. Officers stepped out with stern faces, one holding a printed warrant in his hand. Hope barked once, then sat, watching. Clara held Liam close as they watched from the kitchen window. Mr. Glenn answered the door, and for a moment he laughed. But then the officer showed him the paper. His face changed. He stepped back, slowly. The officers walked past him into the house. Another team circled around back toward the shed. Seconds later, shouts, a call for bolt cutters. Then, silence. Hope stood, tail straight, ears high. A piercing cry rang out across the morning air, a puppy's scream. Hope howled, and Clara broke, down in tears. 10 minutes later, an officer carried a shaking, dirty puppy from behind the shed, wrapped in a towel, alive. Barely. Hope rushed to the fence and barked wildly, desperate, crying. The puppy looked up, blinked slowly, and let out a tiny whine. Liam stood frozen. "Is that?" Clara whispered. "I think that's Angel." Hope's bark turned to soft whimpers, and something in the puppy's eyes changed. Recognition. Weak, but real. The officers carried the puppy to a waiting van, followed by Mr. Glenn in handcuffs. Clara walked outside, Liam by her side. An officer turned to her. "Thank you for not giving up. You saved her." Liam looked at Hope. No, she did. Hope didn't bark again. She just sat by the fence, watching the van, waiting. The morning sun hadn't even touched the sky when Clara woke with a jolt. It wasn't a noise that startled her. It was the silence. No little footsteps on the floor. No Hope pacing near the door. No sound at all. Her eyes flicked to the digital clock. 6:14 a.m. Too early, maybe, but something felt wrong. She got out of bed and stepped into the hallway. "Liam?" she called softly. No answer. She peeked into his room, empty. The blanket was tossed aside, the stuffed bear lay on the floor, but no Liam. Panic gripped her chest. She called again, louder now. "Liam? Hope!" No barks, no soft paws on the floor. Clara rushed through the house. The living room, empty. The bathroom, empty. Then she turned toward the front door. It was wide open. The morning air drifted in through the screen, cold and heavy. Clara ran to it, her voice breaking. "Liam! Hope!" On the porch, something caught her eye. Tiny footprints, bare, pressed into the dew-covered wood. Next to them, pawprints, bloody. Her stomach twisted. The leash was gone. Hope's collar from the hook by the door, missing. Clara bolted back inside and grabbed her phone, her voice shaking as she dialed 911. My son, he's missing. And our dog, our rescue, Hope. The door was open, and there's blood. I think they went into the woods. The dispatcher stayed calm. We're sending a unit right away. Do not go alone into the woods. Stay near the property and wait for officers. But Clara was already running. She followed the prints through the backyard, into the trees. The same woods where Liam had found Hope. The same woods where she feared he was now lost again. Liam! She screamed. Please answer me! No reply. Branches whipped her arms as she pushed deeper, her eyes scanning the ground. The paw prints were there, smudged red. Not fresh blood, but not dry either. She nearly tripped over a fallen branch before catching herself. Then she saw it. One of Liam's socks, snagged on a root. Clara dropped to her knees, heart pounding. Baby! Where are you? Somewhere in the distance, a bark. Faint. Hope. Clara took off again, following the sound. Every part of her screamed with fear, every image in her head worse than the last. Finally, after what felt like forever, she heard it. Closer now. Another bark. Then a whine. Clara pushed through a thick patch of underbrush, and there, just past a crooked oak tree, she saw them. Liam sat on the ground, cradling something wrapped in a towel. Hope stood beside him, tail wagging weakly, her muzzle stained, with old blood. Clara dropped to her knees. Liam! He looked up, his face pale but calm. Mama, I found her. Clara rushed to him, wrapping her arms around his tiny frame. Are you okay? Why did you leave the house? Liam held up the towel. Inside was a tiny brown and black puppy, shivering, filthy, but breathing. Hope knew where to go, he whispered. She kept barking at the woods. I just followed her. Clara was too overwhelmed to speak. Hope stepped forward and nudged the puppy gently, licking its ear. The puppy let out a soft yelp and tried to wriggle closer. Clara blinked through tears. Is that another one? Liam nodded. She led me here. It was under the roots, in a little hole, buried like trash. Clara hugged him tighter. The officers found them 10 minutes later, guided by Clara's dropped phone and the dispatch call. Paramedics checked Liam, just a few scratches and cold feet. The puppy was taken gently into a warm carrier with oxygen. The officer looked at Clara, shaking his head. This dog. She knew where the others were. She's remembering more than we realized. Back at home, Clara sat beside Liam on the couch, her arms around him. You scared me, baby. You can't ever do that again. Liam looked down. I had to help. Hope was trying to tell us. I could feel it. Clara kissed the top of his head. I know, and you did help. But from now on, we help together. Always together. Hope laid at their feet, eyes never leaving. The door. Clara looked down at her. You saved him. Again. Hope closed her eyes. For the first time in days, she looked, at peace. Not because she had forgotten the pain, but because she had finally found something stronger than fear. Purpose. Branches scratched her arms. Leaves slapped her face. But Clara didn't stop running. She could barely see the trail anymore. Just broken twigs, faint paw prints, and the sound of barking echoing through the trees. Hope's bark, urgent, desperate, louder than ever. Liam! Clara screamed into the woods. Hope! No answer. Her breath came in gasps. Fear made her legs move faster. The world around her blurred. She dodged a log, slipped on wet ground, caught herself. Her heart hammered against her ribs like it was trying to break out. Then, in the distance, another sound. Liam's voice. Soft, shaky. Mama, we're here. Clara turned and sprinted toward the sound. She broke through a wall of branches and froze. There, in a hollow patch of earth, knelt Liam, his knees in the dirt, his hands gripping the edge of something half buried. A rusted metal crate, the kind you'd find in a basement, caked in mud, dented on the sides. The door was wedged shut with a broken chain. Beside him, Hope barked furiously, scratching at the crate with both paws, her claws digging into the metal. Clara rushed over. "Liam, are you okay?" He nodded, eyes wide. "Hope brought me here." She sniffed the ground and started digging. Clara dropped to her knees beside them. "What's inside?" "A puppy," Liam whispered. "I saw its eye looking at me, but it's not moving anymore." Hope whined and pressed her face against the door. Clara grabbed a branch and wedged it into the door's edge, pushing hard. It groaned, then popped open with a metallic snap. Inside lay a tiny German Shepherd pup, curled up in a ball, barely breathing. Its fur was matted, its body shaking. A collar, pink and faded, was fastened around its neck. Clara gently pulled the puppy into her arms. Liam leaned closer. "It says Angel." Clara's hands trembled. "It's her," she whispered. "It's Angel." Hope licked the pup's ear and let out a long, soft whimper. Her entire body shook, but she didn't look away. Clara pulled off her jacket and wrapped Angel inside it. "We have to get her to the vet now." She stood quickly, holding the tiny bundle close. Liam grabbed her hand, and Hope stayed right beside them as they made their way back through the woods. Every step felt like forever. The vet's office buzzed with motion when Clara burst through the doors. "Emergency!" she shouted. "We found a puppy, barely breathing." The techs rushed over, lifting Angel from her arms and whisking her to the back. Hope tried to follow, but Clara held her. "Let them help, girl. Please." Minutes stretched into hours. Liam sat in the waiting room, silent, holding Hope's leash. She didn't sit, she paced. Her eyes darted to the door every time it opened. Finally, the vet stepped out. "She's stable for now," she said. "Severely dehydrated, weak, but there's no internal bleeding. She's lucky you found her when you did." Clara sat down hard. "Will she make it?" "Too soon to know. But she's a fighter." Hope stood, watching the vet like she understood every word. "We cleaned the collar," the vet added. "It's old, but the name's clear. Angel." Liam looked up. "That's her baby." The vet knelt down beside Hope. "You brought her back. Most dogs don't remember places like that. But you did." Hope gently nudged the vet's hand with her nose. Back home, the house felt different. Clara cleaned Liam's scraped knees, gave him soup he barely touched, but his eyes kept drifting to the window. "Will Angel live here too?" he asked quietly. Clara smiled. "If she makes it, we'll find a way." Hope laid beside the back door, head resting on her paws. Later that night, Clara sat alone, re-watching the footage from her phone. Hope digging. Liam crawling toward the crate. The way Hope whined when the puppy was pulled out. Clara closed her eyes. "You didn't just remember where she was," she whispered. "You remembered what they took from you." A soft knock on the door startled her. It was the sheriff. "We found more crates behind Glenn's shed," he said. "Empty now. But chains, collars, bloodstains. We think there were more." He buried the evidence. "But that puppy might be what finally puts him away." Clara nodded. Hope remembered. She led us there. The sheriff looked at the dog lying quietly, near the door. "Then she's not just a rescue, she's a witness." Hope's ears twitched. That night, for the first time in weeks, Hope curled up beside Liam's bed and closed her eyes without flinching. And this time, Angel wasn't gone. She was just down the hall, alive. The house was quiet, but Clara wasn't, sleeping. She sat at the kitchen table, the collar marked Angel resting in front of her. The video from her phone played on loop, Liam following Hope into the woods, the rusted cage buried in the dirt, and the moment the puppy was pulled out. Her phone buzzed. It was Officer Harris. "We got your message. This is more than enough." Clara didn't hesitate. By 9 a.m., she was standing in her driveway with a small box in her arms. Inside it were the collar, the broken chain, photos of the crate, a copy of the video, and, most important, the vet's report on Angel's condition. Liam stood beside her, holding Hope's leash. "Why are we giving them Hope's things?" he asked. Clara knelt. "Not giving them, showing them, so they can stop him, once and for all." By 10:12 a.m., 2 animal control trucks and a police cruiser pulled into Mr. Glenn's street. A warrant was in hand this time. Clara and Liam stood across the road, watching from a neighbour's yard. Hope sat like a statue, her eyes locked on the familiar house. Her ears stood straight, tail stiff, body tense. Mr. Glenn opened his front door with a confused smile until he saw the badge, his face twisted. "You can't just walk in here," he barked, but the officer held up the paper. "We can, and we will." Hope let out a single bark, deep and loud. Then another. Then another. The officers entered. First, the living room, then the hallway, then, downstairs, the basement. Clara held Liam close as they waited. Hope paced in small, tight circles, her breathing growing louder. 20 minutes passed. Then, an officer re-emerged from the house and called something over the radio. Another officer followed, this one holding a file folder, a thick one, covered in dust. Behind them, animal control began pulling out evidence. Metal crates, syringes, muzzles, collars, dozens of collars, some marked with numbers, others with names. One said Milo, another Daisy, and another Hope. Clara gasped. "That's hers." The officer handed it to her. "We found it in a locked box, along with this." He opened the file. Inside were pages and pages of handwritten notes, breeding logs, prices, transaction lists. Some had names, others had simple codes, just like the one behind Hope's ear. "He kept records of everything," the officer said. "Dozens of dogs, maybe more." Liam looked up at Clara. He wrote her name like she was a thing. Clara knelt beside Hope and held the collar close. "He doesn't get to own that name anymore. You took it back." Hope stared at the house, and then she barked, not a scared bark, a furious one. It echoed off. The walls bounced through the street, shook the leaves. Inside the house, Mr. Glenn was yelling something. The officers didn't flinch. They pulled him out in handcuffs. Clara stepped back, pulling Liam closer. Hope didn't move. She watched as the man who caused her pain stole her pup and treated her like property was led away. He passed by and glanced. "Toward her," Hope growled. A deep, primal sound. Her fur bristled. Her eyes burned. He looked away first. That's when Clara saw the shift. Hope stood taller, not afraid, not broken, but strong. Later, Officer Harris approached Clara again. "We found records going back years, dogs sold across the state. Some were used for fighting, some for breeding, some worse." Clara nodded, swallowing back the knot in her throat. "And Hope and Angel, they're survivors, and they may help us identify more victims. Every code, every collar, it matters." Hope sat beside Liam, tail gently thumping now. "She's already helped more than you know," Clara said. She remembered everything, even when no one believed her. The officer looked at Hope. "She's brave. Most dogs wouldn't go near that place again, let alone lead someone to it." Clara smiled faintly. She didn't do it for herself. She did it for her baby. Back home, Clara tucked Liam into bed. He held Angel's collar against his chest. "Is the bad man gone forever now?" he asked. Clara brushed hair from his eyes. "Yes, he won't hurt anyone ever again." Downstairs, Hope lay curled up in the corner, her body finally relaxed. The collar that once marked her life of pain now sat in a small box on the mantel, next to a framed photo of Liam, Hope, and a now recovering angel. The house was quiet that night. No pacing, no barking, no fear. Hope finally slept, and the silence wasn't scary anymore. It was peace. The courtroom smelled like old paper and nervous sweat. The walls were tall, cold, and too white. Everything inside felt stiff, uncomfortable, like the truth was trying to hide. Hope sat beside Liam on the floor, her leash held gently in his small hands. She didn't bark. She didn't growl. She just sat there, eyes forward, as if she understood this room mattered. Clara stood at the front of the courtroom, palms slightly shaking as she took her oath. The judge looked at her kindly. "You may begin, Mrs. Reeves." She cleared her throat. "I'm not an officer. I'm not a vet. I'm just a mother who found a dog bleeding in the woods because my son followed a trail of bloody pawprints. And that same dog led us to a buried puppy because she remembered." She took a breath, voice tightening. "Hope isn't just a dog. She's a survivor. She was abused, chained, tattooed like an object, and left to die. But she didn't. She protected my son. She brought us to her baby. And she helped bring justice when no one else believed us." The courtroom was silent. Even Mr. Glenn, sitting stone-faced at the defendant's table, didn't blink. The vet took the stand next. "The injuries we found on Hope, and later on Angel, are consistent with long-term confinement and neglect. Starvation, blunt trauma. And the tattoo behind Hope's ear is one used in illegal breeding operations." She held up photos. Hope's ribs showing through her fur, the scar under her eye, the mark behind her ear. The jury shifted uncomfortably. They weren't pets to this man. They were property, tools. Then came the footage. The jury watched as Mr. Glenn dragged a crate across his yard in the dark. They heard the whimpers from inside. They saw the man's face as he kicked the side and walked away. One juror put a hand over her mouth. Another wiped his eye. When the video ended, Clara felt Hope press closer to Liam's leg. The prosecutor nodded to the judge. "Your Honor, we have documents recovered from Mr. Glenn's basement. Breeding logs, sales transactions, collar tags, medical supplies. Over 20 crates, some clean, others not, and 2 survivors, Hope and her pup." The defense attorney stood. "Your Honor, Mr. Glenn maintains that the animals were under his care. He denies wrongdoing and claims the footage was taken out of context." The judge leaned forward. "You mean the footage where he kicked a crate with a puppy inside? That context?" The room was still. Then the judge spoke again. "Bring the boy up." Clara hesitated. "Liam?" He nodded and stood, Hope following beside him. The bailiff guided them gently to the front. Liam looked up at the judge, holding Hope's leash like it was the most important thing in the world. "You know why you're here, son?" the judge asked softly. Liam nodded. "Because Hope remembers, and nobody else listened to her." "Do you think she's a good dog?" Liam smiled. "She's the best dog." The judge looked down at Hope. "She's not barking." "Why do you think that is?" Liam knelt beside her. "Because she already won." There was a pause. Then the judge looked at Mr. Glenn, eyes hard. "In all my years on this bench, I've never seen a dog do more for justice than most men in this room, ever will. She remembered what was done to her. She led her family to the truth. And she stayed kind. The gavel came down hard. Mr. Glenn Rawley, you are sentenced to 15 years in prison without parole for cruelty, illegal breeding, and aggravated animal abuse. This court owes its thanks to a dog with more heart than any monster who ever walked these halls." Gasps. Some claps. Mr. Glenn didn't move. 2 guards approached him, grabbing his arms. Hope didn't bark. She didn't growl. She just laid her head gently in Liam's lap, eyes calm. The guards dragged Mr. Glenn from the room. As the doors closed, behind him the judge stood. "Let the record show, Hope brought justice." Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed. Reporters crowded around, but Clara shielded Liam. Hope walked quietly at his side, tail still. One reporter leaned in. "Miss Reeves, any comment?" Clara looked at Hope. "Just this. She remembered. She protected. She healed. That's more than most of us know how to do." That night, Liam fell asleep with Hope beside him, her head resting on his chest. Justice was done, but the real victory was peace. Angel had spent her first week at the vet, wrapped in soft towels, too weak to stand. She barely moved, barely blinked. Her ribs were visible beneath her fragile frame. When touched, she flinched. When anyone opened a kennel door nearby, she cried. But Hope was always there. Clara visited every day with Liam and Hope. At first, Hope could only watch from the glass window outside the treatment room. She'd pace, paw the glass, and whimper. The vet allowed her inside once Angel stabilized. The moment Hope entered, something changed. Angel lifted her head. Her ears twitched, and then, for the first time, she tried to move. Not fast, not far, but enough to crawl forward, press her nose to Hope's chest, and let out a shaky little sigh. Hope licked her gently, starting with the ears, just like a mother would. The vet blinked, then smiled. "I've never seen that before. It's like she just remembered how to breathe." Hope curled around Angel's tiny body like a shield. That night, Angel slept soundly for the first time since they'd found her. A few days later, Angel took her first steps. They were awkward, wobbly. Her legs trembled like tree branches in wind, but she pushed forward. 2 steps, then 3. Then she collapsed. Hope rushed over, nuzzled her face, and licked her ear. Angel looked up, then stood again. Liam clapped softly from the bench. "You're doing it, Angel. Just a little more." Clara caught the moment on her phone, not to post online, not to show the world, but to remember that healing wasn't loud. It was quiet. Hope stayed close for every step Angel took. If Angel drifted too far, Hope circled back, pressing her nose gently to guide her. If Angel froze near the metal kennel door, Hope would block her view, as if saying, "You never have to go in there again." Liam began bringing his ukulele to the clinic. He couldn't really play it, not properly, but he strummed slowly, humming little lullabies his grandmother used to sing. One afternoon, Angel was lying on her blanket, ears twitching with each sound. Hope curled beside her, and then Angel let out a tiny yip, like a note of her own. Liam laughed. "She's singing back." The vet nodded. "That's how we know. She's healing." At home, Clara and Liam prepared the living room, a soft new bed for Angel, a baby gate to keep her safe, plush toys, warm blankets, and beside it all, Hope's old truck toy, the same one Liam had left beside her when she was first found. "She'll like it," Liam whispered. "It still smells like you." Hope gently carried the truck in her mouth and dropped it beside the new bed. That night, Angel came home. She stepped over the threshold slowly, her paws pressing into the rug like she wasn't sure it would hold her weight. She sniffed every corner of the living room, stopping to stare at the fireplace, the couch, and the soft light coming through the windows. Then she spotted Liam. He was sitting cross-legged, his arms open. Angel hesitated. Hope gave her a gentle nudge. Angel stepped forward and crawled into Liam's lap. She didn't shake. She didn't flinch. She simply curled into a ball, sighed, and shut her eyes. Hope joined her seconds later, wrapping herself around the pup. Clara watched from the hallway, tears in her eyes. "You're home now," she whispered. The healing had begun, but scars don't vanish overnight. Angel still startled when someone clinked a spoon against a bowl. She froze if anyone raised their voice, even in laughter. She cowered at the sight of a leash until Liam tied one gently around his teddy bear and said, "See, it's just for walks, not traps." Day by day, she got stronger. She played tug-of-war with Liam's socks. She barked at the vacuum. She discovered peanut butter and wagged her tail for the first time when Liam sang her name, and always, always, Hope was nearby, never overbearing, never too far. Just enough to say, "You're not alone anymore." One morning, Clara came downstairs to find both dogs sleeping on either side of Liam's bed. The boy in the middle, the survivors on each side, like guardians. She took a picture, not for the internet, not for the news, but for her heart. Because healing didn't come all at once. It came in moments, in tiny steps, in soft songs, and in the quiet weight of a pup finally sleeping without fear. The house was asleep. Liam had drifted, off hours ago, one arm around Angel, the other tucked under his cheek. The moonlight poured softly through the bedroom window, casting pale light over the floor, the blankets, and the quiet forms of the dogs curled beside him. Clara had just finished folding laundry when something tugged at her chest. A feeling, not fear, not panic, something softer. She walked quietly down the hallway, her bare feet making no sound. When she reached Liam's door, she paused. Hope wasn't in bed. She was standing, still, silent, alone, facing the full-length mirror in the corner of the room. Her reflection stared back at her, scarred and strong, older than her years, eyes heavy with something Clara couldn't name. Hope didn't flinch. She didn't turn when Clara entered. She just stared. At herself, at everything she had been, and everything she had become. Then Clara saw it, just a glint, like a shimmer of water catching light. A tear. It slid slowly down the side of Hope's face, tracing the old scar beneath her left eye. Clara's throat tightened. She stepped closer, slowly, as if approaching someone lost, in prayer. "Hope," she whispered. Still, Hope didn't move. Her chest rose gently. Her ears stayed down. She was remembering. Not the pain, not the violence, but the girl who had survived it all. Clara knelt beside her. "You did it, girl," she said softly. "You made it." Hope blinked, and another tear fell. She turned her head slightly, just enough to press her nose against Clara's hand. No bark, no cry, just connection. Clara looked at her reflection in the mirror too, side by side with Hope, a mother who had nearly lost her child and a mother who had lost hers. For a moment, neither one of them said anything. They just stared. Two survivors. Quiet, still. Then Clara spoke again. "You didn't just survive. You brought her back. You saved Liam. You gave Angel a life." Hope sat, down slowly. Her legs folded beneath her, her head low. But her tail thumped once. Clara smiled through tears. "You remember the cage, the pain, the woods. But now you remember something else too." Hope looked up, her eyes no longer haunted. Liam stirred in his sleep. Angel whimpered once and rolled onto her back, paws twitching in a dream. Hope stood and walked to them. She curled herself around the two of them like a blanket of fur and strength and memory. Clara watched from the doorway. She remembered the night Liam found her. Bloody pawprints, a toy truck in the dirt, a broken body with eyes that still held a flicker of light. And now, that broken body had become a protector, a guide, a healer. Hope didn't need to be rescued anymore. She had become the rescuer. Clara stepped back and leaned against the wall, wiping her face. Down the hall, a picture hung crooked. Liam holding Angel in his lap. Hope beside them, tongue out, eyes bright. Clara straightened it and whispered, "You did more than survive. You taught all of us how." Later that night, she returned to her room, heart full. And in Liam's room, beneath the silver moon, Hope lay perfectly still, eyes closed, breath steady, her head resting lightly on Angel's back. The tear had dried, but the truth remained. She had made it. The vet had been kind, but her words had lingered. Hope may never regain full strength in her back legs. Her body's been through more than most. Some damage doesn't heal completely. Clara had nodded. She understood, but watching Hope limp slightly during walks, her tail still wagging, made something ache inside her. Not out of pity, but out of awe. She was doing it anyway, moving forward despite it all. That morning, the house stirred with soft sounds, the clink of cereal bowls, Liam humming quietly, Angel chewing on a squeaky giraffe near the kitchen table. The sun hadn't fully risen, but a golden glow was already spilling across the backyard. Hope sat by the sliding door, her ears twitching. Then she stood and barked, once, twice, then a third time. Liam looked up from his cereal. "That's different," he said. "She only does that when something's there." Clara dried her hands and opened the back door. Hope turned to Liam, gave him a small nudge with her nose, then looked out toward the yard. "You want him to come?" Clara asked. Hope barked again once. Liam scrambled to his feet, slipping his shoes. "On without socks. Okay, girl, show me." Hope walked slowly but with purpose. Each step was steady, deliberate, not rushed. Clara followed, her robe trailing behind her. Hope led them past the garden, around the willow tree, to a quiet patch of earth near the edge of the fence, the same spot where the first paw prints had disappeared weeks ago. She sniffed once, twice, then began to dig. Not wildly, carefully. Claws scraping the soft dirt, nose pressed to the ground. Liam dropped to his knees and joined her, scooping with both hands. Within seconds, something small poked out of the soil. A piece of rubber. Red, faded. Hope stopped. She backed up, tail wagging faintly. Clara stepped closer and bent down, brushing away the last bit of dirt. It was a chew toy, shaped like a bone, worn down from years of biting. One edge had tiny teeth marks, barely visible. Liam held it up. "Is this hers?" Hope stepped forward and gently took it in her mouth. Not to play, not to chew, just to hold. Then she dropped it and sat beside it, staring at the sunlit patch like it meant something only she could understand. Clara knelt beside her. "Is this from before?" Hope didn't answer, of course, but her eyes said everything. Liam looked around. "Why now?" Clara thought for a moment. "Maybe she's ready." Ready for what? To remember the good. Hope nudged the toy toward Liam. Then I looked back at the spot where it had been buried. It wasn't just a toy. It was a piece of her past. A piece she chose to bring back. On her terms. Angel came bounding out of the house, ears flopping, paws too big for her legs. She skidded to a stop beside Hope and sniffed the toy. Hope nudged it toward her too. Angel sniffed again, then gently placed her paw on it. Liam's eyes lit up. She's sharing it. Clara watched them, her throat tight. She buried it when she thought everything was gone. Now she's giving it back. Hope stood and turned her face to the sky. The clouds shifted gently, and a beam of morning sunlight landed right where the toy had been. It looked like a spotlight, a sign. Liam stood beside Hope and whispered, "Is it from heaven?" Clara didn't answer right away. She knelt beside them, ran her fingers through Hope's thick fur and said, "Maybe, or maybe it's her way of saying she believes in life again." Hope walked toward Angel and licked her ear. Then, in an act that made Clara's heart swell, she laid down next to the toy and placed her paw over it, then gently touched it to Angel's. A passing of the past. A blessing. A sign. Liam sat cross-legged beside them and looked at the sky. "She's not scared of remembering anymore." Clara nodded. Hope had survived the dark, and now she was showing them the light. It started with a single post. Just one video Clara uploaded late at night. A quiet moment of Liam asleep with Hope and Angel curled beside him, the soft caption reading, "She remembered her pain and chose to protect anyway." Clara hadn't expected anything, but by morning, the video had been shared over 10,000 times. By the end of the week, Hope's name was everywhere. The dog that remembered, Hope the survivor, the German shepherd who led a boy to the truth. Emails flooded in, comments, messages, calls from news stations, and then letters. So many letters. Dozens arrived every day, some from children, some from war veterans, some from women in shelters. She reminded me that it's okay to be scared and brave at the same time. My dog died 3 years ago. Watching Hope gave me the strength to adopt again. She made me believe in good again. Clara, read everyone. She stacked them in shoeboxes, labeled them by state. Hope would sit nearby as she opened them, sometimes sniffing the paper, sometimes resting her head in Clara's lap, as if she somehow knew her story was no longer just hers. And then came that letter. It arrived in a pink envelope with uneven handwriting. The return address was a shelter for women and children in Ohio. Clara opened it, not expecting much, but the words hit like thunder. "Dear Hope, I'm 10. My name is May. I saw you on the internet. My mum never let me watch dog videos, but someone at the shelter showed me yours. I saw how you ran even though you were hurt. I saw how you protected that baby dog. I saw how you barked at the bad man, even when you were scared. So I did the same thing. I told my teacher that my stepdad hit us. I told her I wanted to run away like you did. And she listened. Now we're in a safe place. I have my own bed, and I don't cry when I sleep anymore. You saved me too. Thank you, Hope. I hope you sleep better now. I do. Love, May." Clara read it twice before she could breathe again. She showed it to Liam, who whispered, "That's what heroes do. They help people they've never even met." Hope sat beside them, looking up, tail gently sweeping the floor. Clara had the letter, framed. She hung it in the hallway near the front door, right above Hope's leash, not to show off, not for visitors, but to remind them all, pain can ripple outward, but so can healing. News reporters begged for interviews. One station wanted to fly them out for a feature. Another offered to sponsor Angel's care. Clara said no to most of them. Hope's. "Not a symbol," she told one producer. "She's a soul, and she's already done enough." But she did say yes to one thing, a short documentary by a local rescue center. It was small, quiet, honest. It showed Hope's first steps in the woods, the bloody pawprints, the courtroom sketch, Angel's first bark, and the letter from May. When it aired, shelters saw a spike in donations. Dog adoptions rose. Survivors called in. One even said, "Hope reminded me I could get out too." Hope became more than a headline. She became a movement. One morning, Clara found a shoebox on the porch. Inside were dog treats, hand-sewn toys, and a simple note. "I was going to end my life last night. Then I saw your video." Hope barked, and something in me said, "Not yet." So I'm still here. Thank you. Clara sat on the porch steps and cried, not because of the sadness, but because of the proof. One soul, just one, could save many. That afternoon, Liam found Hope lying by the window, her nose resting on the frame. "You miss her?" he asked. Hope lifted her head. "May," Liam whispered. "I wish she could meet you." Clara overheard and smiled softly. Maybe she already has, in the only way that matters. Later that week, they received a small package. Inside was a drawing. It showed a brown-haired girl holding hands with a German shepherd. The caption in crayon read, "Hope walks with me now." Clara placed it on the fridge, right next to Liam's math test and Angel's first paw print, because some things belong in the center of a home. That night, Hope curled beside Angel on the rug. Liam fell asleep on the couch, one arm draped over both. Clara stood in the hallway, staring at May's letter. "You saved her," she whispered. "And she saved you. And maybe you're saving the rest of us too." Outside, the wind picked up gently. Hope's ears twitched once. Then she closed her eyes and rested her head. Not with fear, but with peace. The morning was bright, too bright for April. But no one complained. The kitchen table was covered in streamers Liam had tangled and untangled at least 10 times. There were balloons taped to the fridge, each one slightly deflated, but still floating with effort. And in the middle of the living room stood a homemade cake with messy blue icing and uneven writing. "Happy birthday, Liam and Angel." Clara lit the candles slowly. "3 for you," she whispered to Liam, "and 1 for Angel." Liam clapped his hands. "Can Hope have one too?" Clara smiled. "Hope gets the biggest slice of all." Outside, Hope was running in the backyard, not pacing, not guarding, just running. Her paws danced across the grass like she'd never known pain. Her ears bounced with each stride. Every now and then, she'd stop to glance toward the house, making sure they were watching. Angel chased behind her in awkward hops too, excited to care how she looked. Her back legs still wobbled, but she didn't fall anymore. She was fast enough to keep up now. Liam stood at the screen door, grinning from ear to ear. "They're playing tag." Clara knelt beside him. "They're playing freedom," Hope barked, circled a patch of sunlight, and rolled onto her back, legs kicking at the air. Her belly, once scarred and sunken, rose and fell with steady breaths. Liam ran outside with his tiny paper crown, half sliding off his head. "Come on, girls, it's party time." Hope stood and wagged her tail, letting Liam throw his arms around her neck. Angel joined in, licking Liam's cheek and nearly knocking him over with joy. Clara stood in the doorway, holding the camera. She clicked once, then again, but some things pictures couldn't hold. They had no guests, no loud music, no wrapped gifts, just the 3 of them. And that was enough. Later, Clara brought out peanut butter dog biscuits shaped like bones, placing 1 in each tiny paper bowl. Hope sat politely, her tail tapping the floor in a slow rhythm. Angel, not so patient, shoved her face in immediately and came back up with crumbs stuck to her nose. Liam laughed so hard he nearly fell over. "You're a mess, Angel." Hope licked Angel's nose clean, like a mother fixing her pup before company arrived. Clara watched from the steps, arms folded, heart full. She thought about the first day, the blood on the leaves, the paw prints in the dirt. Liam's quiet whisper, "It's okay, puppy." She thought about the nights filled with howls and shaking, about the cage, the court, the way Hope didn't bark when justice was finally served. She looked at her son now, older, wiser, still gentle, the boy who followed pain and found purpose. And she looked at Hope, still scarred, but no longer scared. As the sun began to dip, Clara lit 3 candles on the cake. Liam blew them out in one breath. "I wished for dogs forever," he said proudly. Clara laughed. "I think that one already came true." After cake, they laid out in the backyard. Liam on a blanket, Hope and Angel sprawled beside him. Clara sat in a lawn chair, sipping tea as the sky turned soft orange. "Mama," Liam whispered, tracing a line in the sky. "Why do stars wait for dark before they show up?" Clara smiled. "Because some lights only shine when it's quiet enough to notice." Hope nudged Liam's shoulder gently, her breath warm against his neck. "She's saying happy birthday," he said, eyes closing. Angel yawned and curled into a tight ball, tail tucked under her chin. Clara stood and gathered a blanket, draping it over the 3 of them. She kissed Liam's forehead, then whispered to Hope, "You followed the blood and brought back love." Hope blinked, then placed her head on Liam's chest. The stars appeared one by one, slow and quiet, and in a house once haunted by pain. Only peace remained, not the kind that comes from forgetting, but the kind that grows from surviving and starting again.